Hey everyone, Mike Singer and Tyler Horka here from Blue and Gold with another video coming to you on a Monday. We also covered the big news about Tyler Buckner's injury. He's out for the season with a shoulder issue. So make sure you go and check that video out as well. But we also wanted to have another video to focus a little bit more on Marcus Freeman's Monday press conference. Now, the news, Tyler, about Buckner was obviously the number one topic and was discussed at length. Just coming off of the loss against Marshall and this Buckner news, I'm not sure if I've seen Freeman more just down in the dumps. It was a very sobering press conference. You were in the room. Did it feel like that as well when you were actually there? I was just watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, we've definitely had a couple of these now. I'd say the post game from Marshall was a bit of a wake up, slap in the face. Like, whoa, this isn't a random press conference in June with Marcus Freeman where all he can talk about is how good recruiting is going and the program is pointed up and national championships are on the horizon and all of those things. This was, hey, we're 0-2. We just lost to Marshall. Marcus Freeman is the first Notre Dame coach in program history to lose his first three games. He has an 0-3 record. So sobering is the right word. And I think there's some frustration involved. I would say Marcus Freeman is even a little bit flustered or agitated. Or look, you got to remember he's 36 years old. He's a first-time head coach. Things have not gone the way that anyone expected them to go. He definitely didn't expect to be sitting there on September 12th talking about an 0-2 record and a loss to Marshall. And I think a lot of people thought they would lose to Ohio State. And what's crazy about all this is the loss to Ohio State was reassuring for a lot of people. They played a top 5 team in the country tough, covered the wide point spread. But now you're sitting here a week later and all of a sudden everything has hit the fan. I think it's all happened so quickly that Marcus Freeman doesn't know how to react to it. And there were some questions that he was asked today where he had to pause a little bit, search for an answer. And I think that's telling. He's searching for an answer in the press conference because behind closed doors, when people aren't seeing what's going on, I think these guys are searching for answers on the practice field and in team meetings. And he posed questions himself today. He said, what we have to figure out is why. He keeps asking, or he keeps talking about execution and these guys aren't playing the way that we thought they would or the way that we think they can. Why is that happening? I don't know. I don't really have the answer to that right now, and I don't think Marcus Freeman does either.
Yeah, I felt for the guy because everyone's respectfully grilling him with questions about less rotation on defense to have your better players in there, and let's get this guy in there more. I'm like, it's basically like, how do you fix this? And he's like, man, like, do you have? If I'm Mark Sherman, like, do you have the answer? I'm trying to figure this thing out as well. Is that the vibe you got?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where it's like, well, if you knew the answer, you'd be making $5 million a year and you'd be the head coach of Notre Dame football. I don't know if a lot of people have the answer. If someone had the answer, they'd certainly tell Marcus Freeman, this is what you need to do. I don't think those answers exist. They just need to play better football right now. But the question is, how do they get to that point? How do they do it? I think Marcus Freeman is learning a lot about being a head coach right now.
And there's so many questions. There's the quarterback, there's the offensive line, running back, which guys do you play there, receivers, even tight end with Kevin Bauman. We talked about before we started recording, he's not great in run blocking. Go to the defensive side of the ball. The defensive line is I mean, the whole defense hasn't created a turnover, right? You got Notre Dame's offense 35 points through 2 games or 34. Um, it, yeah, just questions everywhere. The linebackers, don't ask Mike Goolsby about those linebackers because he will give you an earful. One thing before we do go is let's talk about Chris Tyree. I think you can count almost on 2 hands how many the times he's touched the ball this season. I think it was 5 against Marshall. Freeman was asked about getting Tyree the ball, and I think the Irish could use this young man.
Yeah, I don't know if it was 5 against Marshall, but if you know that for sure, I'm pretty sure it was 5 against Ohio State, or maybe it was 6. So yeah, almost 2 hands, and that's not enough. You need multiple sets of hands. You need a lot of people to count how many times he should be touching the ball because when you see him, he gives something that Notre Dame can't get anywhere else. He has flashes that are better than Audric Estime and better than Logan Diggs. And you got to remember, those guys are sophomores. that didn't really do it at the level that Chris Tyree did it as a true freshman. Go back 2 years ago, Chris Tyree looked like a dude. He looked like the guy that was going to take over for Kyron Williams. I think he is still that. But like you said, there's so many issues with the offensive line. The quarterback play hasn't been great. Now you're changing quarterbacks, and the wide receivers I talked about in the Tyler Buckner video that you mentioned, they haven't been very good. So at some point, you got to give Chris Tyree the ball, whether it's between the tackles, let him run, or whether it's getting the ball out in his hands in space as a wide receiver or catching balls out of the backfield. You have to get the ball into his hands because at this point in time, he's a top 3 playmaker on your team. Michael Mayer probably being number 1. I think Lorenzo Styles showed flashes that he can be number 2 consistently. We don't know. If you want to talk about consistency, if you give Chris Tyree those touches, I'm pretty confident that he's going to make the most out of a lot of them. Now, there's going to be a play where he gets stuffed at the line of scrimmage. Yeah, but that might not be entirely his fault either. So the more times that you get him the ball, the more chances he has to make a big play for you.
Yeah, so Notre Dame opened as a 12.5 point favorite against Cal. That I just now checked the line as we are recording. This has moved down to 9. I don't know if that was a reaction to the opening line or a reaction to just this news, but I felt 12.5 was way too high. I mean, Notre Dame offense, I mean, based on what we've seen this season, they're lucky to score 12 at all against Cal. I mean, seriously. So how do you kind of feel about this Notre Dame team going against Cal, who's not a juggernaut offensively, but seemed to be defensively?
Yeah, Justin Wilcox hangs his hat on the defensive side of the ball. So he's going to bring a Cal Bears team to South Bend that's going to want to play a struggling Notre Dame offense, very tough on that side of the ball. And we saw against Marshall, if Notre Dame doesn't get off to a hot start, you start getting the little moans and groans in the stadium and everyone's going, oh no, here we go. And I think you get that on the Notre Dame sideline too. It's like, oh man, we're in one of these again. And that's exactly what Cal wants. Justin Wilcox wants those guys to be like, yeah, you've got these guys right where you want them because they can't do anything to you defensively right now. We're owning the line of scrimmage. And that's what Marshall did. They pushed Notre Dame around a little bit. If Cal's able to go in there early and do that, then you're going to get the same type of game, I think, because like you said, Cal's not a world beater offensively. They're not going to go into Notre Dame Stadium and boat race Notre Dame, even though the Fighting Irish offense has looked as feeble as it has. But if you get them into a little bit of a rock fight like Marshall did, a couple plays here, like a pick 6 that Tyler Buckner threw, or maybe a big special teams return or a funky play can completely change the tide of the game. And I think Cal is going to be in a position to do that. And by the way, I think Marshall's quarterback experience with Henry Colombi was a big factor in that game. He never looked too rattled. He completed around 80% of his passes. Cal has a guy in Jack Plummer who started and played a lot of games at Purdue, started against Notre Dame Stadium at this time last year, almost a year to the day, by the way. I think there's a 1-day difference. It was week 3 last year. So he's not going to be rattled. He's going to be like, man, I didn't get these guys last year. Kind of close. Maybe I can get them this year. They're reeling a little bit. So with where Notre Dame is at, you should be pretty afraid that they might drop to 0-3 against Cal.
All right, the sure things about Notre Dame football right now is that you got a really good punter. Michael Mayer is a superstar. You know, Brandon Joseph and Lorenzo Styles look really good. It's like, other than that, that's about it.
Right.
That's about it. It is a fascinating season, and we will cover it all at blueandgold.com, whether Notre Dame goes 10-2, 2-10, or anywhere in between. So make sure you lock into the blueandgold.com YouTube channel here. Like this video, go to blueandgold.com for all of your coverage of Notre Dame athletics. And as always, we'll catch you next time.